Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the MetaRoy Podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics and the developments in the Web3 space every week. I am your host, Prashant Roy, and joining me today is Cahill Camden, the director of Byte Media Group, now called Digital Vision Media Group, which is kind of helping Web3, NFT, and blockchain companies optimize for growth. Before we start, make sure to like, share, and comment on this podcast and subscribe to it on YouTube or any platform of your choice on which you're listening to it, and get notified when new podcast episodes are released. Also, do remember that none of it is financial advice, so please do your own research before investing into crypto space. Cahill, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you today. How is it going?
Yeah, Roy, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Things are interesting, as we can all tell from the crypto space, but things are going well. You know, we've had some growth happen with a number of clients. We're launching some new products ourselves, and it's an interesting time to be in the crypto space.
Exactly. I think this is the time when people start actually building for real, right? And uh, in the bull market, it's all hype driven by people, and in the bear market is where you really understand how to separate the rice from the chaff, right? So,
100%.
before all of that, let's understand a bit about you. So, can you give our audience a brief introduction about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director of Digital Vision Media Group. We help Web3 companies with growth. So we do fractional CMO work. I've done that for a number of clients who have actually recently got acquired. So we've had two of our main clients get acquired over the last 6 months for a total of over $51 million, which is fantastic. Um, and so fractional CMO work is something that I personally do for clients. And then my agency does PR, paid media, and content marketing for technology companies, primarily Web3.
So, what exactly does fractional CMO work mean in the sense that you refer to as?
Yeah, great question. So fractional CMO work, imagine having a full-time CMO, but I'm not there for 40 hours a week. And you still get the insights, you still get the ideas about where you want to go with strategy, how you should allocate budgets, what you should do in terms of moving forward for growth. But you don't have to pay the full-time CMO rates. It's much more affordable for companies that are looking to grow, and so that's what I do personally.
Got it. Got it. Uh, why particularly the Web3 space? What was that? How did you come into this? Can you talk about the story of when did
Yeah,
you first discover Bitcoin, for example? Can you share those stories with us?
yeah, absolutely. So I started in, I want to say 2017, 2016. So in 2016, I had a friend of mine at the time who had asked me to help his company, his startup, with some marketing. And so that's when I started getting into the space a lot more. But I had heard about, obviously, Bitcoin and crypto a couple of years before that. I never got into it because I always thought this is kind of like video game money. Like, how can video game money be taken seriously? That's impossible. And so I dismissed it for the first couple of years, actually. And then again, my friend was like, "Hey, we could really use some help with some very small things in the marketing side." And I was like, "All right, sure, why not?" And so from there, I started getting more into crypto. Obviously, read the Bitcoin white paper and just went down the rabbit hole and started looking into it more and more. And it's like, this is amazing. Like, it's going to change the world. And that was it. Thank you. It's been working in it ever since.
So, when you talk about growth in Web3, how does it differ from the Web2 space? What are the main differences that can you outline that for our audience?
Yeah, so I think in general it's a bit of a buzz term, of course. There are, of course, differences, but I think it's a bit of like, if you put AI and automations in your company name, you're going to do better. It's similar with like Web3. Look, in the way I see it is they're both very similar, like very, very similar. And there are, of course, Web2 companies that are doing things that Web3 companies are doing. Like they include their audience or their users or members in rewards. Like that happens in Web2. But now we've got Web3 and everyone's saying, "Oh, it's so interesting. It's, play to earn, or it's, something along those lines." And really, I think there's a lot of similarities, much more similarities than differences. Growth in Web3 is really it's really just a matter of getting your customers, your audience, your users, whatever you would like to call them, to really buy into your idea, really buy into trust with your platform, your DApp, your layer two, whatever it is that you're selling or building. So, trust is extremely important. And then finding some way to include them into either the decision making process, the roadmap, the rewards, all of these things have become very popular in the Web3 space with DAOs and bounty campaigns and all the rest. And it's a new take on kind of older tactics, I would say, which is, hey, if you include your audience into what you're building, they're going to, of course, be more connected with you. They're going to want to help you, but if you treat them like they're just a transaction and they're just customers, then of course they're going to treat you in a different way. And so I think that's one of the main differences between Web2 and Web3, is it's much more customer centric.
When you talk about customer centricity, what do you actually mean? Is it any different than what you're doing in Web 2? Because Web 2 is a lot, you're doing a lot of things as well, right? You're understanding customer profiles, you're building personas, you're addressing those questions that people might have, versus what you see in the Web3 spaces. People are building communities, people
Mm.
are there is no ads, for example, as of now at least. So how does this translate into what growth means for Web3?
Well, so I think you've mentioned a couple of interesting things, right? Web 2 is much more, as you mentioned, is much more about, let me dissect the customer profile and target somebody. And once I target them, I get them into my platform. I make money from them. I try and upsell them. I try and keep them in as a customer for a long time. Fine. I think Web3 is definitely has a part of that. Of course, that's needed. You have over 1 billion people on Facebook. You need to target the right people. That is something you need to do. But Web3, I think, adds a whole nother layer of, hey, we're going to actually ask you about feedback. We're going to ask you about the roadmap. We might include you in the decision making process of what we're going to do next. We might actually pay you out and give you some rewards in terms of gifts, tokens, et cetera, to help us continue our journey as a company. Now, again, this happened in Web 2 with the loyalty and rewards programs. It's very similar. But maybe it wasn't done to the same degree. And so now we're seeing much more of that used as a way to, like you said, grow communities and push things forward.
A lot of founders are actually listening to this podcast right now, and what they really want to know is, they have followed a particular approach when they have founded Web 2 companies. Now they are uh, transitioning into a completely different type of environment, right? So if they have to put it in a strategy, what would you outline as the main drivers or pillars of that strategy? Can you explain a
Got
bit
it.
around that?
Yeah. So first things first, I have a bit of a contrarian perspective. I don't think it's that different compared to Web 2. I think it's actually very similar. I think okay, so what do I mean by it's very similar? You still have ads. You still need to target people. You still need to get data on your potential customers. You still need to track and understand how they're using your platform, what they're doing in your game or your app. You still need to communicate with them on a regular basis, right? Whether that's in a community or a newsletter or text message or email, like it doesn't matter. You still need to communicate with them. That's all the same. What is different though is, I think, community is way, way, way stronger. And the community requires a core purpose. It requires something that people can get behind or rally around. So I want to be part of a project, or I want to give a project my money, or I want to use a DApp that I believe in. And this is much more of a focus in Web3. Um, Community engagement, much more of a focus in Web3. In Web2, you could have Nike, or Nike, however you decide to say it. They can just target you and sell shoes. In the Web3 world, it's sneakerheads who want to communicate with other sneakerheads about the cool Nike shoes, and that's what's going to drive more sales and more marketing. And so I think we're seeing that shift. Um, we're also seeing in the Web3 world, including your audience or some of your key members of your audience in your roadmap and your decision making process, I think is a much bigger reality in Web3, where that didn't really happen in Web2 almost at all, right? Like maybe you had some, hey, fill out the survey and do some feedback for me. But in Web3, it's much more, hey, vote on what you think we need to do next. Yes, of course, we're still going to do the surveys and we're still going to ask you the questions, but you get to actually start to influence what's happening and where we're going as a company. And even if your influence is only very small, you still get some influence. Whereas in Web2, it's like, I didn't get a say in what happened with Instagram or Facebook, right? This is like, we just get what we're given. And so I think that's a big difference. So as founders, I think as you move forward into the Web3 marketing space and you're building strategies, it's how do you incorporate that into your business? How do you incorporate more community? How do you incorporate more an updated version of loyalty and rewards, so bounty programs? How do you incorporate communicating with your users in a way that allows you to get their feedback? Yes, same as Web2, but also allows them to maybe give some direction into where your app or your program or whatever it is you're designing, where that's going. And so these are the different components I think need to be baked into or included into your strategy.
Another question, and this is because I work in the marketing space, I keep getting this question: what does the funnel look like in Web3? How would different channels work together to create that funnel, and how do you kind of acquire those customers? How do you kind of keep them engaged? Can you share a example of what a Web3 funnel for marketing would look like?
Yeah. So again, I think it's pretty similar to Web 2, right? First thing is you need to get awareness. If no one knows about your if no one knows about your DApp, let's just say DApp. No one knows about your DApp. It doesn't matter how good it is. Um, that's it. You can have a great product in your co-working space or at home, and that's it. No one knows about it. So you got to get awareness. How do you get awareness? It's the same way you got awareness before. You need PR, you need to create great content, you need to leverage SEO, you might go to conferences, you might do advertisements, you might reach out to communities. This is exactly the same as Web 2, right? Once you get that awareness, okay, things start to change a bit. You get awareness, people know about your product. Okay, what's the next step? Well, that depends on your company, depends on what you're doing, right? Maybe your next step is, hey, join the community. Okay, cool. Then you need to have a way of translating those community members into paying customers, right? Or educating them, or getting them to the next step of understanding how your product works, right? Through the community, fine. If it's not through the community, maybe it's on your site, you get people to connect with your newsletter, or you get people to take action so that you can communicate with them on a regular basis outside of the community. Well, the email newsletter side of things is the same as Web 2. It's the same kind of funnel. Once you have that attention, you have people on your site, you have a way of communicating with them, either on community or through more traditional platform like newsletter. Well, now you're marketing to them. How you market to them maybe changes. Maybe you get people to help vote on things, or maybe you get people to contribute their suggestions, or maybe you put out a bounty campaign for user generated content. These are all more Web3 related activities. Um, but the idea is the same. You need awareness to start. Once people hit your website or hit your landing page or whatever you want to call it, they come to your community. You need a way to constantly talk to them. That could be newsletter, that could be community. Once you constantly talk to them, you get them involved more in your project. Once they're more involved, you can ask them for the sale down the road, which is, hey, buy our NFT, pay for our app, buy our tokens, whatever that might be. But that kind of funnel is how I see things being built effectively. That's how we do it.
Makes sense completely. I think one big difference, this is my personal opinion, big difference is because NFTs are such a powerful marketing tool. I think that is what separates a lot of things from what happens in the Web 2 and Web 3 space. Have you seen such instances of big brands using NFTs? I think you already mentioned about Nike. Can you outline what a NFT marketing campaign would look like for such a big brand?
Yeah, so we've never done a massive brand like Nike, but we have sold out NFTs in like 45 seconds, something like that, 65 seconds, over $1 million of NFTs being sold. Um, so again, the what we did for that promotion was it was very similar to how you would promote the launch of anything, right? We got a ton of awareness. We lined up a ton of PR. We lined up a ton of communities. We talked to a lot of influencers. Um, we got some very heavy, people who could afford to purchase quite a few NFTs and build the hype. We reached out to them well in advance of launching the actual dropping the NFT, right? And so we built that up. And so as we got closer to the drop date, we would build up the hype on social. We'd get the articles published. We'd start to ask the communities to talk about the upcoming drop. And we built up the hype just like you would with a regular launch. When that launch happened, then you obviously have thousands of people who are in the community who are excited about what's going on. You have many different articles in the marketplace. You have influencers talking about this on their YouTube channels, TikTok, Twitter, etc. And so all of that merges into one drop day, right? So the drop happens, and now all of a sudden a whole bunch of people start buying it. So that's what we did. With bigger brands, I think what we're seeing them use NFTs as a way to get people involved in that brand's community. So the NFT is almost like it can be used as an access pass. It can be used as a reward. It can be used as an exclusive item that you can own that gives you access to the rest of the community and that gives you access to what Nike's doing behind the scenes with their top athletes or whatever. And that's where I think we're seeing NFTs really start to be used by brands. It's like these limited drops, this access, and this community building.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Another quite common question that I get is everything in Web 2, or at least most of the things in Web 2, are measurable, right? You can attribute certain channels and understand the value of each channel, attribute it in your flow and your funnel, and understand which funnels to focus on. That is a kind of absent, or maybe it's not as much great as it should be in the Web3 space. How would you measure effectiveness of your marketing efforts in the Web3 space? Do you measure on chain activity? Is there some other metric to do that? Can you throw some light around that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And this is something that we're actually launching a data analytics service where we connect all the different social platforms, your Google Ads, your Google Analytics, your Google Search Console, all into one dashboard, and then we give you that access so you can just run with it on your own. Or if you want us to give you a data analyst and give you a monthly breakdown for 30 minutes, an hour, we will do that as well. So that's something that we've seen is a big challenge. To answer your question, I do think it is a challenge in the Web3 space. Yeah, 100%. And there's a lot of movement, so for example, Brave browser is one of our clients. Okay? Um, for those who don't know Brave browser, I definitely recommend checking them out if you're into privacy and if you're into the Web3 space. Huge company there.
I'm just
Um,
recording this podcast on Brave browser
oh,
as
are
we
you?
speak.
Great.
So
Yeah. So they're one of our clients, right?
yeah.
And so what we've seen obviously is cookieless browsing, cookieless tracking. That's definitely happening in the Web3 space. And you're right. This makes it hard for small startups and for mid-sized startups to understand like who's doing what with our platform. It's really hard if you can't see the data. And so one of the things that we look at is, again, you hear me say this a couple of times, you definitely need to have some kind of insight into what people are doing and how they're utilizing your platform. And so yes, you can do more self-directed tracking, so like surveys, right? You can do those types of things to give you some insight, but you also, I think you should also really make sure you have the right tracking. It depends on how deep you want to go, but you want to have the right tracking on your website, on your newsletter, on the links that are going to your community. You need to think about tracking when you're doing events on your community, whether that's a poker night or some other type of event for your community. You should be tracking things like how many people signed up versus how many people showed up versus how many people stayed to the end. Like, you need to track that stuff so that you can decide as a business owner or a leader, is this worth our time and effort? Like, just because you can't get the data necessarily for on-chain, you could get the data for on-chain stuff, depends on how far you want to go. But just because there's something like cookieless browsing doesn't mean that you can't track what people are doing and how they're interacting with your site. You can. You actually can, and you should, even if that means you're doing it a little bit manually. Like, okay, this is your business, and if you're really passionate about trying to push your product or your service to the Web3 market and get more and more adoption, then you got to do some of these manual things. It's hard, it sucks, but you got to do it. And so that's what I'd say is, like, leverage the tools that are out there. Google Data Studio, or say Google Data Studio is what we offer, but Google Analytics, Google Search Console, all the tracking on the different social platforms. Do that. Utilize UTM tags, etc. Then also do some manual tracking within your communities, within your events, and look at the data once a month or once every couple of weeks, depending on how fast you're growing, and use that to make your product better and target better people. Target the people you want to target.
Absolutely. Kale, there is, this is a kind of a controversial topic, but there is a kind of a
Oh,
stigma associated with paid ads in Web3, right? What are your thoughts on using paid ads? Because it is an inevitable channel that has to be used at any point, right? But people in the Web3 space usually take, don't like it so well. There's a huge stigma associated with it. Can you talk about your thoughts around this particular topic?
my thoughts are experiment. Like, there's a reason why paid ads work. Paid, there's a reason why they work. And without getting into all the details, just understand that paid ads work. Maybe there's going to be a certain part of your audience that's like, hey, we don't like this. Like, you guys are selling out, whatever. That's fine. I think you've got to ask yourself, as a founder or as a leader, like, what is my true goal here? And if my goal is to have as many people use my secure wallet as possible, then that should be your goal. It's like, hey, I want to have 100,000 people use my secure wallet because it's better than MetaMask. Fine. But then you need to push forward on that. Doing it organically may happen, but you can also do that with ads. And if you've got that tool at your disposal, I would say leverage that tool. You know, so long as you do it within the bounds of your kind of community ethics, right? So, like, there's so many different levels you can take it. You can get really granular with the ads and the tracking, and maybe that's like nah, it's not something you really want to do, right? But you can also just do, you can support podcasts like this one with ads. You know what I mean? Like if they accept it, you can support blogs that you like with ads. You can do general targeting. Like there's a lot of different things. You can take it to a lot of different levels. And so I would say don't write off the channel just because there's a bit of a stigma around it. I'd say leverage it and use it to the degree that supports you, but doesn't really bother your community that much.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's some great great thoughts around it. And this is a common thing that I keep hearing, that oh, my community is not going to take it lightly, or you're kind of trying to sell out, or you're kind to dilute the community. Those are the comments that I keep hearing from founders who are trying to grow their businesses in the Web3 space, right? So which is why the question came up. But this
I
is,
think
I think,
I think just to jump in, I think that kind of tells me as well then that maybe if your community is that vocal about it, that's a good thing. How can you leverage that? That tells me that maybe your early community members, they're feeling like, hey, we're not going to be recognized if you dilute the community. Hey, you're not really, maybe they think you're not taking Web3 seriously. Okay, fine. I'm listening to that feedback. How then can you leverage that and use that to help everyone and to help your DApp or your company grow? Like if that's really what they're thinking about, cool. Then ask the community, how are they going to help you grow? What are they recommending? How can they help you get to more people? And maybe you'll get some great answers that you never thought about. And by the way, maybe you'll also get someone who's like, I can do this. Hello, give me an NFT, give me a coin, whatever, and I'll do it for you. And that's fantastic. That's really exciting because now you have people who believe in your product, who are part of your community, who can also help you grow, and they're willing to help you grow. Oh, that's super cool. That's a super cool place to be. And so I think I would say, like, I've said this before to companies that we've worked with, is like turn some of those weaknesses into strengths, right? It's kind of like a jujitsu move, right? Or martial arts is popular everywhere in the world. I'm sure there's a martial art in India or in Japan, that like judo, like there's different martial arts, but the idea is the same. You use the energy of your opponent, or of, in this case, the complaints, and you turn that into a strength. And if you can do that, wow, like now you're in a really good position.
completely makes sense. Another thing that I keep hearing, and this is more from a B2B perspective, what they are kind of right now doing to market their companies is mostly doing partnerships or events or stuff like that. What are the other avenues for B2B marketing growth, and that you have seen in your experience in the Web3 space?
Yeah, good question. So we go through over 21 traction channels when we're assessing strategy. So there's actually a book that you can buy on Amazon. Um, I don't make any commission from it. This is just, we use this in our strategy and we've added to it. So here it is. We use this book called Traction by Justin Mars. Justin Mars was the guy who created, I believe, DuckDuckGo. So he created another search engine competing with Google. Those traction channels are slightly older, maybe it's 8 years old, 10 years old, but they still really make sense. And there's a whole bunch of new ones that you can add to this. There's new ones that we assess, but this is a great starting point. So you've got events, like you mentioned, you've got conferences, you've got advertisements. We've talked about that. We've talked about community. Then you've got things like PR. You've got things like content. You've got things like PR stunts. So you might see this, with different companies like Elon Musk is good at PR stunts, right? He launches his Tesla into space with a rocket man in the passenger side, and it's a convertible. That's a PR stunt, right? Now it's a big one, but maybe you do one not so big. But these are the types of
Have you
things.
done a smaller one which might be
Yeah, so
relevant for Web3?
we haven't done any PR stunts ourselves. We focus on more traditional PR. So how do we get people on like BNN? Like that's what we do. Or how do we get people in CoinDesk or Bitcoin.com? That's our kind of target. But you can do a PR stunt, right? PR stunt might be, it might be something like, hey, we're giving away uh, a, a Tesla Model X that's, all, I'm looking at your background. It's bright blue for the whatever, for a competition or for this very specific number. If someone can figure out this problem or whatever, and now all of a sudden people start talking about it. That's a PR stunt. And so for the cost of a Tesla, you get 2, 3, 5, 10x more in PR impressions than you would for the cost of the Tesla, right? This is an example. So there's that. You can do direct sales, right? So B2B, you can pick up the phone, you can do cold emails, you can do LinkedIn, you can create your own communities. You can buy out communities, you can buy out newsletters. Like there's all sorts of things you can do to really target either B2B audience or D2C, direct to consumer audience. The next question is, okay, which one's the best? It depends. It really depends, right? And so what we run our clients through when we're doing strategy is we look at, what do you think is going to be the best based on your target audience? We don't know, but what do you think? And so we'll test those things first. Once we test those, then we have data and analytics to make sure we understand, is this working or is this not working? And from there, we will systematically change, make adjustments, pivot, so that we can actually find what really works for you, right?
Cahill, I have a few questions around different marketing strategies in different market conditions. You have seen a couple of ups and downs in the crypto market, at least, right? You have been here in the Web3 space since 2016. How does marketing differ from when we are in a bull market versus when we are in a bear market? How does your marketing strategy change?
Yeah, good question. So when you're in, like, what we've seen is, let's talk about bear markets first. When you're in a bear market, everyone is spending money. Everyone is trying to get attention. So you really got to cut through the noise, right? Um, People are competing very heavily for the money that's flowing around so quickly, right? You don't have to have as much quality in terms of the marketing that you're doing, because people are just, oh yeah, I'll throw money at this, I'll throw money at that. Like, oh, this is awesome, everything's great, we're gonna make money, to the
Sorry,
moon.
this
Let's
is the
go.
bull market
Yeah,
case
bull
you are
market.
talking
Yeah,
about.
sorry, bull market. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so the hard thing there is you got to cut through the noise, right? If you're trying to do PR, or if you're trying to do or get get more community members, you're competing with a lot of people who are also trying to do the same thing. So the prices of things are higher. The stories need to be better. They need to be more exclusive. You need to do more work to get your community members through the door, because everyone's trying to say, hey, 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 join my community, right? I think in the bear market, it shifts, and it shifts to more quality. In a bear market, you got to have quality. And I think what that means is you've got to have a real good, clean understanding of where you're taking your product, how it differs, how are you going to help your customers, and the communication with your audience, even if it's small, needs to be a lot greater, I think, right? Because people are much more skeptical, they're much more mistrusting, they're much more like, yeah, I don't know if I want to put even 0.1 ETH in this. Yeah, like, you got to really prove to me that this is going to be a good thing. And so I think in a bear market, your marketing really becomes a lot more communicative. So you're speaking a lot more to your community. You're sharing a lot more. You're building trust a lot more. But I think there's a really great opportunity in terms of building awareness for the people who are looking for projects, because there's not a lot of competition. So if you are well capitalized, or you do have profitability, or you do have the ability to spend a bit, wow, your dollars go really far, because everyone's hurting. And so whether that's a blog or whether that's advertising or whether that's podcast or whether that's an event, people are like, yeah, I don't want to spend money. And so if you can come up and you can say, hey, yeah, I'll spend a bit of money, let's go. You can really get a lot of mileage. You can get a lot of mileage, from your dollars. So that's how I think it differs.
Would you say you're a contrarian marketer, like you spend less in bull markets and more during bear markets? Because that's the
No,
feeling I'm getting
we spend
from.
a lot in both. Yeah, it's just a different type of spend, right? And where you allocate your money is different, right? Like I think what we're seeing too is, as an example, right now we've seen a lot of brands pull back in their advertising spend, right? Okay, fine. So I think that's clear. If you look at Google Trends, or if you look at Google like annual reports, look at Facebook earnings calls, look at LinkedIn, yeah, ads down, right? Like ads down. We're seeing that with some of our clients as well. So where do we allocate those dollars? Well, we allocate those dollars to things that are going to likely have a better target audience, that are going to create more engagement, and that are going to build more community. So events, newsletters, podcasts, like these types of things are where we would shift dollars to. Yeah, of course, we'll still do Google, we'll still do Facebook, etc. But maybe we'll pull back on that because we're not shooting such a broad net. We're trying to target a very niche audience, right? In a bull market, when things are really going well, then it's much more of a numbers game, right? So then, think about it, right? Like in a bull market, everyone's excited. Does it make sense to go to every single conference, or 10 conferences? Maybe not, because the cost is very high. But spending that money on Google ads or Facebook ads or Brave ads or whatever it might be, that could get us a lot of people clicking on our site, a lot of views. And so we'll shift in a bull market. Whereas in a bear market, yeah, maybe it's better to go to 5 events and be really targeted with those events, because those communities are going to build strong, and we're going to get some influencers and some notable people. And that's what we want, so that the money becomes better spent there.
And speaking of bear markets, right now we are facing so many troubles regarding scams and hacks that are happening in the market. Right, this is kind of eroding the trust that people have in the Web3 space, also in certain ways. So, in such a scenario, how do you kind of maintain the reputation of your company, or do you do more PR? What should be the strategy for people in this particular market situation?
Yeah, great question. So I always tell our clients is you want to be direct and honest about what's going on. So we've dealt with clients who have had, plus $50 million hacks, right? And besides the core team, I was the first person to know. And the and by the way, I had cryptocurrency from that company as well. So I'm the first person to know. And I always say the same thing. It's like, you got to be direct and transparent with your community if you want to build trust. I think not everyone does it. Not everyone does it. Look at Do Kwon, right? Not everyone does it. Regardless of whether you like Terra Luna, he's saying steady lads, deploy more capital, right up into the moment where this whole entire thing tanked. I don't believe in that strategy. I believe that you should be direct and honest. Here's what's going on. Here's what we're worried about. Do you need to tell them everything? No, not necessarily. But hey, here's what's going on. Here's how we're going to try and fix the situation. Here's what's happening. And so in a market where there's a lot of hacks, scams, people are having mistrust about projects, I think it's important to be extra communicative and really share, here's what our plan is. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing to solve this bug or solve this hack, or solve this problem. Here's how we're going to build trust. Here's why we're moving slowly. Here's why we're moving fast. Here, and just share that insight. I kind of think about it like, if I was going to be building a company with some friends, you've got your best friends, you've got close friends, you've got kind of friends, right? I still think you want to share that information with them and say like, hey guys, like I don't know you super well, but this is what we're trying to do. And here's what's going on. We're having a bit of difficulty. I don't want to get into all the details, but here's what we're trying to do to fix it. And I think that that's super important as you go forward, especially if you've been hit with a hack or a scam or something like that, and people have like lower trust in your product or service.
Absolutely. Cahill, you have seen the market for 6 years now. What has been your favorite marketing, case study in your personal experience? Can you share a particular case study of any particular company that took it from like 0 to 1 or 1 to 100 in
Yeah,
that sense? Can you share some particular story around it, whichever is your favorite one so far?
sure. So I think probably one of the most impactful ones was I started working with a crypto trading platform when they had just under 2,000 users, like registered, not 2,000 active, like just 2,000 registered users. And in a few years, we took them from 2,000 to over 200,000, and they got acquired for tens of millions of dollars. So that was probably the coolest one. And so I think the question is, wow, okay, that's awesome. What actually happened? A lot of things happened, but I think some of it starts with, well, most of it starts with a strategy, right? So the strategy is like, okay, what are you planning to do? How are you planning to grow? How are we really going to make this happen? And just being really honest with it. Like I think I'm guilty of this myself. We all want things to grow really fast. We want things to be like, oh yeah, in 6 months we're gonna make millions of dollars. Yeah, okay, everyone wants that. But the reality of it is things are usually very slow to get going, and then they exponentially grow, right? And that's that exponential graph that everyone sees where it's up and to the right. And it always looks like, wow, Facebook, Airbnb, they're all doing these amazing things in year 6. But for year 1 to 4, nothing happened. Like if you worked at that company from year 1 to 3, maybe not Facebook's not a bad Facebook's a bad example, but for most companies, the first little bit is like brutal, man. It's just like it seems like there's no growth. It seems like nothing's happening. You're spending time, energy, money on trying to push your business, and you're getting a couple signups here and there, and then all of a sudden, all the hard work that you do starts to really compound. And I think you asked me a question about what was one of the coolest growth experiences. I think that was one of the coolest growth experiences. Like we've got a case study that we're putting together where I show the affiliate referral growth because I started the affiliate program at this company and I was the first affiliate. And for like the first, I don't know, like the first 3-4 months, it was just me. And I'm not like there wasn't a lot of people that I referred, a few people here and there. And then there was one more affiliate. And then a month later, there was one more affiliate. So for the first 3 months, there was just me. Then for the next 2 months, there's like two other people. And the the thought there was like, this is not working. It's not worth our time. It's not worth the money. Because you got to remember, they're paying me. They're paying for this affiliate program. We're promoting it as well, writing content about it, et cetera. And they're like, this is just not worth it. And I was like, hold on, we're seeing some growth. Let's just tweak some things and let's see where it goes. Okay, you fast forward another 3 months, and all of a sudden, the affiliate program is like the number 3 driver of traffic for the entire company. If you were 3 months before, you would say, hey, maybe we should pull the plug. And so I think for most founders, again, understanding that growth compounds on itself is a really important factor, whether you're in a bull market or a bear market. The first little bit often seems really brutal. It seems like you're not going anywhere. But get the data, get the analytics, keep on tracking things, keep on pushing, and then you'll see eventually it'll start to take off. And so that's what happened with that company. That's probably one of the coolest stories. And yeah, we basically took them from under 2,000 users to acquired for tens of millions of dollars in just over 3 years.
I think one of the other aspects where people keep asking me is, how do I get constructive feedback to improve my product, right? And uh, I mean, particularly in the Web3 space, right? What are the channels that you use personally? What generally works for Web3? Can you share some thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I just say ask your audience. Like ask your audience, like constantly ask. You got to put your product out there for users, for beta users. Ask people to use it. You got to ask. Like a lot of people are like, oh no, I've got a great product. I'm still building it. It's going to be perfect when I launch. No, no, no. Like Reid Hoffman says. So Reid Hoffman, for those who don't know, started LinkedIn, billionaire, right? He says, if you are happy with the launch of your product, you've probably launched too late. You got to push your product out there. You got to get it out there. Ask your audience for feedback. Ask them to test things out. There's also actually places where you can go to actually get beta users. Like you pay for it, but you can get someone to go walk through your entire product for $20, $50, whatever it might be, and they'll try and break your stuff. And then they'll give you the feedback. Here's what's wrong. Here's where it's slow. Here's what's going on. And that's great. For a little bit of money, you can get that feedback and you can make your product better. So I would say just ask. You got to ask. A lot of people don't ask. Ask.
Absolutely. Cahill, these are the questions that I had around Digital Vision Media. For people who want to reach out to Cahill through Digital Vision Media, I'll leave the links in the description or the show notes, depending upon where you're listening to this podcast on. Cahill, let's dive into some personal questions.
Sure.
I really want to know about your book and what were the thoughts you had while you were writing it. Can you share some light around your book, Decoding Digital What is Cryptocurrency?
Sure, yeah. So I wrote this book a few years ago because my parents had asked me in the previous, there was a bull run and then crypto crashed, right? It went into crypto winter. And so I think at the time, Bitcoin was up around 18K and then it dropped down to like 5, something like that, 4.8, something around that. But it was up around 18K. And my parents were like, okay, we have a little bit of money. Should we invest it in Bitcoin right now? It's like 17.5. And I was like, yeah, no. And they're like, why not? And I was like, it's just complicated. I don't know how to explain this to you. There's there's so many things about cryptocurrency, about understanding what Bitcoin is, understanding why this is probably the top of the market. I can't explain it to you, mom and dad. Like, just no, not now's not the right time. I'll tell you when the right time is. And I had a bunch of friends asking me about this as well. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write a book. It'll be a good exercise for me. And I think it will help people understand the basics of cryptocurrency. And so that's what it's about. It's a book that covers the basics of cryptocurrency. And I wrote it in a way where you don't have to read it from cover to cover. So that's one. You can just open it up to a certain topic and read about that topic. And then two, I wrote it in a way where there's 3 different levels to each topic, right? You can just get the general idea and just get an understanding of what that term means. You can get more understanding of why that term's important, get some more history about it, get some more technical details about it. And then there's a section where you can impress your friends with knowledge. So you can really dive into why the technicals of, SHA-256 encryption really make a difference in the cryptocurrency space, and why the Byzantine generals problem was solved, and blah, blah, blah. You can get really into the details if you want. Most people maybe don't want to get into those details, but if you really want to nerd out on the subject, you can. So that's why I wrote that book, was to originally just help my friends and my family just get a basic understanding of cryptocurrency, and then share that with anyone who wants to read it.
Absolutely. Anyone who wants to read it, I'll put the links again in the description. You can check that book out. I think it's on Amazon, right?
It is on Amazon, yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll drop the price because I think it's I'd much rather have more people read the book. So I'm gonna drop the price to like $10 or something.
Absolutely. You can check that out using the links in the description again. You have seen the crypto space very closely, Cahill. What are your thoughts around new crypto investors? What is that one piece of advice you would give them about the crypto space? Can you just take something out of the book and just
Yeah.
give us like a excerpt of it for people who don't want to read books?
Sure. Well, if you don't, you should read books. But so I actually think there's probably 3 pieces of advice that are very simple to follow. One is you got to do your own research. So you're going to see this term DYOR, do your own research. You have to do your own research. And I know we're all busy. I know it kind of sucks sometimes to have to spend time watching YouTube videos, reading the white paper, looking at that sucks. But no one's looking out for your wealth more importantly than you are. It's your wealth, it's your life. And so you've got to do your own research on products, okay? I say that because, as you mentioned, Roy, there's a whole bunch of scams. There's a whole bunch of rug pulls, people trying to take your money. There's a whole bunch of shady characters in this space. It does happen. So you got to do your own research. Okay? So that's one. Two is not your keys, not your crypto. That is such an important piece of information to remember. Not your keys, not your crypto. What does that mean? That means if you're storing your crypto on another platform that you don't have control over, so that could be any exchange, it could be any trading platform. If that's where you keep your crypto, it's not your crypto, it's the exchange's crypto. This is a big one to remember. And I say that because exchanges get hacked all the time. I've seen it happen with my clients. We've seen it happen in the market. And what happens is if you lose your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or whatever coin you're into and you lose it on the platform, it's gone forever. The platform is not going to give you your crypto back. It's not like a bank. So, not your keys, not your crypto. Okay? So, do your own research, not your keys, not your crypto. The third one is just start small. Okay? Start small and scale up from there. If you're going to be looking at crypto investments, whether it's NFTs, DeFi, whether it's just blue chips, altcoins, etc., start small. Don't jump into it and like, hey, I'm going to invest in all these NFTs and all these different DeFi platforms, and I'm just going to go. Calm down. Like, there's a lot of time. You're still early. Just start with the basics, and I would really recommend, start looking into the blue chips first, and then go from there. Okay. So we've got 3 points. 1, do your own research. 2, not your keys, not your crypto. And 3, start small and scale up from there. So that's kind of for any beginner newbie who's getting into the space.
Absolutely. The 3 points of wisdom, I would say, from Cahill's side for people who are new to this space or investing, just starting out to invest. What is the most important thing that you have learned while in your time in the Web3 space, and what is that you want to focus next? Like, what is the next in store for you in your life, in your career in the Web3 space?
Yeah, great. So we're actually building some really interesting tools to help companies understand their analytics and data, and to also help them really accelerate their own growth. Right. So that's what we're doing. So I launched something called Digital Vision Startup Studio, where we're launching a number of products. And for example, one of those products I did mention before, we're pulling in your social data, your Google Analytics data, your Google Ads data, your Facebook Ads data, your newsletter data. We're pulling in all this data into one spot so that you can see and understand what's going on. So that's really the next thing for myself, and I'm just excited to help interesting companies grow. I think tools like this will really be able to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cahill, thank you so much for sharing these insights with our audience today. How can our audience connect with you online? What are the best places to connect with you on social media or any other channel? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on Twitter. It's Cahill_Camden, CAMDEN, or on digitalvision.io. You can fill out our form and get connected with our team for growth and marketing.
Absolutely. I'll leave the links in the description or the show notes below. So do guys check that out. If you have any questions, I think Cahill will be the best person to share more insights around marketing for Web3 projects. Cahill, thank you so much for your time today. It was a great pleasure talking to you, and I learned so much, and a lot of my doubts got cleared about marketing in the Web3 space. So thank you for sharing these learnings with us. And I wish you and your company a great future in your future endeavors as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I think it's awesome that you're educating the market and helping people understand how to move forward in the Web3 space, whether they're a founder, an investor, or whether they're just interested in in the art aspect of NFT. So I think that's really cool. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.